Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's training on reaching beyond and being happy after codependency. Marshall Burtcher, if you're new to me, and I help codependents and survivors of narcissistic relationships rediscover their happiness and their well-being after those experiences, so they can go on and live happy lives, do the things that really matter to them. So today we're going to be talking about the 8 essentials to healthy relationships. So I figured, why not, right? Let's talk about relationships a bit. Now, before I get started, I'm going to share this out to the community. The community is where you can find safe haven, shelter, guidance, support, privacy, right? And tools and guidance to help you heal and thrive after codependency. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and I'm going to share this out right here. Boom. All right. So the 8 essentials to healthy relationships. Now, in the description, there is a link, and that link clicks to what I call the relationship bare minimum. So last Sunday, like 4 days ago, we were in week 7 of the From Addiction to Connection course, which deals with healing the trauma bond. Hi, Rose. And we started discussing, well, that week's all about building a healthy foundation for relationships using my what, how, who model for detecting and then building connection with healthy people. And part of that is the 8 essentials to relationships, to happy, healthy relationships. And so I want you to click that link because we're going to be talking about this criteria here. There's 8 of them: boundaries, reliability, accountability, privacy, integrity, acceptance, positive warm regard, and empathy. These 8 components need to show up in an individual before you do anything significant with them. This is kind of the trick here. With codependency, we tend to want to be in the middle of a relationship. We don't tolerate the beginning of a relationship very well because we have a lot of attachment distress. We don't know ourselves well. We're seeking others to complete us. We're living in euphoria. Our sense of worth is tied up in them and in the fact that, or it's even just tied up in having a relationship because we think relationship equals value. Relationship equals I'm lovable. So we put a lot of significance on being in a relationship, and we don't put a lot of time and effort and scrutiny into whom we're in a relationship with. The other thing we tend to do is we tend to choose someone because we like them and then try to make them fit what we want and how we want it. This is where this controlling, fixing, change them, know their potential fantasy shows up. These are largely a result of not understanding and being connected to one's own value, voice, and vision. Because when we get into relationship, we need to show up with a stronger sense of self. We need to understand what our basic limitations are, what our preferences are, how we want what we want, which we don't put a lot of time into. And then we need to be confident enough within our own value, our own skin, to show up as who we are so that we can advocate for ourselves and rock the boat. Because without that rocking of the boat, without creating a little, conflict, a little argument here and there, disagreement, saying no, disappointing them, we're not going to discover who they really are. We're going to get trapped into an ideal, into a fantasy. And that significantly raises the probability of being manipulated, seduced, and then put into the seduction, abuse, discard cycle that the narcissistic and toxic abusive people put us through. This is why we have the 8 bare minimums, guys. Because in codependency, we were not raised, we were not taught what to look for in people. Because we were not taught to have boundaries. We were taught that our value was anchored in their point of view, like they determine our worth. We were taught that we were supposed to please because other people's feelings mattered more than ours. Our needs were secondary to theirs. So we're not taught the essentials so that we could understand if this person's even healthy enough to have a relationship with, or a friendship, or any kind of connection with it where they're involved in our life. So these 8 bare minimums of boundaries, like, do they actually keep their own boundaries? Do they respect our boundaries? When we say no, do they respect it, or do they push back and try to break through that boundary? Do they pester? It's a biggie. Reliability. Are they predictable in their responses and behaviors? Most people have a predictability. Now, what that is going to define whether or not they're toxic or healthy. Because if they're reliable in gaslighting you, putting you down, ignoring you, using you, you're dealing with a toxic person. Now, if they're reliable in understanding your feelings, giving you space and time, connecting with you, respecting you, you're dealing with someone who values your feelings and values who you are. We need to find reliability in that. Then accountability. Do they take accountability? Do they receive your complaints? Do they confront problems? Do they identify accountability? Oops, that's mine. I've got to fix that. Oh, that's yours. Would you please look at that? Respects accountability and then expects it. People with integrity expect it. People with integrity expect it from others. They don't go through this wishy-washy relationship with other people where they're like, well, I have integrity, but I'm fine choosing that person for whatever and let them do their thing, even though they don't have integrity, or they lie all the time, or they do things that are illegal. I'm going to choose them anyway. We see this a lot in politics. There's a lot of lack of integrity in our choices with whom we nominate and support. See that a lot. I've seen it in myself. So we got to have integrity and accountability to ourselves. And then we need to choose people to have relationships with that reflect these values as well. Then privacy. Privacy is about keeping things private. Sometimes you have things you want to keep private with yourself. Then when things you share with others, do they keep it private? Do you keep private the things people share with you? That's a very, very important place for you to feel safe and secure with another human being, and even with yourself. Then integrity. Do they keep their word? Do their words and their behaviors line up? Period. It's that simple. When they screw up, do they take accountability? Do they correct the behavior? Do they keep their word then? This is simple. It really is this simple. There is not a lot of nuance when it comes to integrity. If I say I'm going to do a thing, do the thing. If I don't, then there's something wrong. People love to give leniency here. And this is where we get the problems we have in our world. Because we don't adhere to accountability when integrity is violated. See, consequence is our most important and essential teacher in our world. And if we're unwilling to receive consequence, and we're unwilling to hold people accountable for what they say that they'll do and that they don't do, then we don't create the ability for change and for awareness. Instead, we create tolerance for toxicity. We create tolerance for abuse. And then we get into really, really big problems within ourselves, within our relationships, within the world. Integrity is essential. Then there's acceptance. You maintain openness and willingness to understand the other person. It's not set on being a different way, warm and receptive to differences. So narcissistic systems, difference is a no-no because it creates a boundary. It creates a friction point because the narcissist just wants their cookie. They don't give any concern or care about what the other person feels, thinks, or wants. They just want their cookie, and difference cuts them off from that. Difference is an important place of connection and understanding. This allows us to feel seen, to feel loved, to feel valued, okay? And to feel respected and safe to be ourselves. So acceptance is important. Then we have what's called positive warm regard. This is where we give the benefit of the doubt to the other person. Now, this is based on how that's earned, or how they earn it. This is not something you should give to them automatically. Codependence. Wow, do we give it to them automatically? We give them, well, they're just having a bad day, or they had a bad childhood, or that's their trauma. No. No. Just no. Trauma doesn't give anybody permission or a license to abuse other people. Bad behavior needs to be confronted with accountability, with the ownership. No, that hurts. That stops now, or we're going to have change in what's going on here, depending on what it is and the context. But we don't give positive moral regard to people who haven't earned it, especially people we barely know. We need to be highly skeptical about who this person claims to be. We need to look at their patterns of behavior to understand who they choose to be, because it's behavior, not words, that demonstrate who the person really is. That's where we find our truth. That's where we find our safety. Okay? So positive moral regard is earned by a person who is showing up consistently in boundaries, reliability, accountability, privacy, integrity, and acceptance. This is how you're building trust, by the way. This is how you're developing trust and seeing that this person keeps their word, so they're a safe person, and that if we want to, we can invest more trust in. And then the last one is empathy demonstrates compassion, understanding, and respect for your feelings and those of others. That's essential, especially if you've dealt with narcissists in your life, because they lack that. They might feign it here and there, but it's funny. When narcissists feign empathy, they usually make it about themselves and not about the other person. So there's always these little hints that they do that way. But with these 8 principles, guys, you can change the way you relate to other people. You can have healthier relationships. You can have healthier friendships. You can say no to people faster. It changes the way you date. It changes the way you orient yourself to understanding who people are. It changes the way you look at yourself. You look at yourself, where am I showing up in these 8 principles? Where do I need to grow? Where can I strengthen my skills in these things? Because with these 8 bare minimums, that was what must be present in the person before you ever move into something deeper with them. This must be demonstrated in them by their behaviors. It's not something you should tell them. It's something that they should show up with. If they don't show up with it, move on, because you're going to enter in a codependent cycle. Do you want to raise an adult, or do you want to have a relationship with one? And that's really where you're going to go. Okay? So I hope this helps. Looks like Rose says, yeah, this is so clear. Yep, you're welcome. Because it's supposed to be clear. This is what we should have gotten when we were being raised. This is what it should have been modeled to us, both in society and both with our parents. So if we don't know these things, it's not necessarily our fault, right? But now we have that information, and now we can go out and change it. Now, if you struggle to know your value and you're struggling to know your voice so that you can make choices in response to people, and being able to detect these kinds of traits in individuals, then I invite you to join the Happiness Strategy. We start here in just under 5 days. Enrollment closes this Sunday, so 4 days from now. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. The Happiness Strategy is my 3-stage journey where I take you into retrieving and then nurturing your innate values so you really feel your sense of worth. Tune you into your voice so you can hear you finally, and then follow that voice into the vision that it creates for you, which are typically the outcomes you desire in your life. We do that over 10 weeks. You get lifetime access to that, plus the future editions of that course. And you also get access to the From Addiction to Connection course I mentioned earlier, as well as the Heal course. It's basically the fundamentals of healing from codependency and moving into your own happiness. And that's why it's called the Happiness Strategy. So you can click the link above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and join. We've got a few seats left open. I'd be excited to have you as my student. Guys, I appreciate you. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping, and I will see you guys tomorrow for our next video. Be safe out there. See you soon.